ChatGPT is currently on everyone's lips. Just looking at the Google search trends shows how popular this topic is right now. But can ChatGPT also shake up the smart home industry and create a shopping list for a new smart home for me? Does it work in the end, and how does it compare to my custom-built smart home? All of that after the intro. Enjoy. Yes, first of all, we need to outline the framework conditions. I would like to set a budget of $100, cover a single room, because that is realistic, and it also allows for different components to be included, use a local solution and not a cloud solution, utilize a wireless standard because I don't want to drill holes in the walls and lay cables, and finally the smart home should be controllable via Apple HomeKit, Google Home, and of course Alexa, and have the capability to create automation. So I simply asked ChatGPT, and the suggestions were interesting. As a central control unit, a Raspberry Pi with a Zigbee and Wi-Fi dongle is suggested to me, although the Raspberry Pi actually has an internal Wi-Fi interface and can theoretically even be connected directly to the router via LAN. Additionally, I am recommended the topic of lighting, with ChatGPT specifically suggesting the Xiaomi floor lamps, which only work via Wi-Fi. Regarding sockets, I am suggested the HS from TP-Link, which only works with Wi-Fi, is somewhat older and in my opinion is not the cheapest option on the market. Lastly, I was informed that the components will likely not fit entirely within my price budget, as a smart home always involves a somewhat higher investment, but I can still retrofit components later on. So I asked ChatGPT again to find out which control software I should install on my Raspberry Pi to manage the components I just purchased. In response, there was a list of the usual suspects, including of course Home Assistant, OpenHub, but also surprisingly Domotics, which I have heard of before but have never tried. So if you would like to see a video of me testing this out, feel free to write it in the comments and I might make a video about it. Also, if you're already here, could you help me improve this terrible statistic? As you can see, most of the people who watch my videos are not subscribers to this channel, and I would really appreciate it if you could help me change that. Next, I moved on to the installation, as I need to somehow get Home Assistant onto the Raspberry Pi. So I asked ChatGPT how to install Home Assistant on the Raspberry Pi and received a very complicated set of instructions. It said I should first install Raspberry Lite, connect via SSH, update the packages, then install Python, create a new user, and then install Home Assistant. The installation of Raspbian Lite was not described in detail, so I simply used the Raspberry Pi imager and selected the appropriate image. However, problems arose during the installation of Home Assistant. Since the instructions were likely not completely up to date, I encountered repeated error messages. In the end, because I still wanted to install Home Assistant via Python, I decided to test everything by using the official instructions from Home Assistant itself. The disadvantage was definitely that I could only run Home Assistant as long as I had the console open, which obviously makes no sense for a 24/7 operation, and it was only running on one of the 4 cores of the Raspberry Pi, making it extremely slow. Next, I then focused on adding the lamp. I was dealing with the HS socket, but I couldn't add these 2 devices using the instructions from ChatGPT, as I was suggested Supervisor for some reason, which is an extension for Home Assistant that is not included in the Python package and is also not needed for adding these 2 devices at all. It should be noted that adding these 2 devices was really very easy. First, for the HS, I set it up using the Casa app from TP-Link in Home Assistant, selected the integration, and then the device was automatically found. Just click to add it, and that was it for the setup. The same principle applies to the e-Lite. Once the app is used, connected to the home network, and the integration with Home Assistant is selected, the device is automatically found, added again, and that's it. But how would I evaluate the suggestions and instructions from ChatGPT now? Basically, the ideas that ChatGPT provided were not that bad at all. However, both the instructions and the suggestions were somehow extremely lacking and would have led me to unnecessarily purchase a Zigbee stick, which I ultimately didn't need at all. This would have been a waste of money, especially with a budget of $100 that I want to use as effectively as possible, which would have been very unfortunate. Accordingly, I can at least at this current time consider ChatGPT as a construction guide, or I would not recommend a buying guide for a smart home and would rather advise you to look online for pre-compiled lists. People have probably invested significantly more time in creating a reasonable list of components that you should acquire, and the guides are definitely more comprehensive and will lead you to your goal more quickly. On the other hand, I would rather use ChatGPT when I don't understand something and want it to explain the whole thing to me. However, one must also be cautious, as this artificial intelligence has an answer for everything, which can easily lead one astray, especially if one does not know better. If you want to build a $100 smart home, feel free to stop by next week, as I will be making a video about it where I will present my list of components that I would recommend. So if you don't want to miss it, feel free to click on subscribe, and I would say, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, I would of course be very happy about a review. Feel free to share your opinion in the comments, and then I would say, see you again next week. Until then, take care and goodbye.